Okay, and we're back, Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee. And last on our agenda, and last for our off-session meetings, is committee discussion on essentially where do we go from here. In part, I want to get input from folks on the committee on what do we do with the handoff for the committees of jurisdiction. Do we want to do anything else? And I want this to sort of be a kind of free-flowing discussion. So Joe Pakin's in the room. Is anyone online in the waiting room? Yeah, and so anyone can just sort of chime in, ask further questions on where we might want to go. So with that, does anyone want to start? Do you want to have any thoughts on what next?
Mr. Chair, just to make sure the committee's aware, to clarify earlier, I had mentioned that I had a bill draft in.
Yep.
And it is for Rick, I believe, and it's okay to say, I believe it's for the governor's cyber advisory and for the AI.
Yeah, so I can speak about it, Rep. Sylvia?
Yes, you may. Yep.
So the request would be to add members, legislative members, and potentially judiciary members to the Cybersecurity Council. I don't think you mentioned the other council, the AI.
Okay.
But that we can talk about that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So I just wanted to let folks know that that was in.
And you're going to be introducing that, Rep. Julia? Or are you
Yes.
asking for, okay, or are you asking for this committee to weigh in or do anything with it?
Well, I've asked for it to be drafted. I'm guessing it would come to our committee, right, Kath? Probably. And, I'm happy to have sponsors.
I assume it would. And then GovOps, I don't really know what
Probably,
it has to be.
Yeah, I think it did end up in GovOps last time, actually. So I would note that the administration, I believe, proposed this several years ago, adding at least the legislative member. And I am not privy to why, and I lost track of it and I have not tracked down, but the legislature did not pass this. So I think it would be good for this committee maybe to write to the Government Operations Committee about why we are suggesting this. Or maybe we is too strong of a word, it's my bill, but perhaps writing about sending some communication about this, if in fact that's the position of the committee. It is definitely my position. This is something that has really long frustrated me, that the legislature is really blind to this, what's happening on the Cybersecurity Council, which I think would clear up a lot of challenges, honestly, and putting the judiciary on there.
Yeah, and obviously we don't have the language of the bill, so I wouldn't want to presume or take any sort of vote. But I did see we had another committee where we did send a letter that was essentially from the chair, but sent around by email to get folks' input on it before it was sent out. If we do that, that's probably the way we'll go. I don't anticipate meeting again before the 6th, but the draft of that will not be done before when?
I mean, it's a pretty simple one. So if that's something that you want to prioritize and have the committee's opinion on, and it can be done via email.
Yeah, I'll talk to you
after.
We can see if that'll be something that the committee will want to do in terms of a letter to specifically committees that would be addressing that bill. And the folks that have been on this committee in the past, what has the handoff been, especially for the mid-session? I know last year, the end of session, I think there was just the approval of releasing the money, and then one member of the committee had a letter to the next iteration of Jitoc, but I don't think that the committee sent a letter anywhere.
There typically have been discussions, at least on the Senate side, between the members of Jitoc and the committees of jurisdiction on the Senate side. Typically, those have been informal rather than formal. There have been where we have had specific pieces of legislation we wanted to consider. And whether they were Jitoc or they were Jitoc related, we did again have testimony. I know myself and my Senate counterpart last year, the year before last, did in fact appear before, I think it was GovOps, one of the bills.
Yeah, and Kath, I think I mentioned to you, if I hadn't, I'll mention to you now, I was hoping that yourself, myself, and Senator Harrison would be able to meet, discuss a little bit about what happened with Jitoc over the off session and see what your two committees would want to address in terms of what was learned or wasn't learned, and just have that be sort of a chair discussion. And sort of my input on that is, I think that Jitoc overall is needs to be somewhat more focused. And part of that's because I'm the chair and focusing that in there, but the statutory charge for Jitoc is huge. Especially for sort of an off-session thing, narrowing it and understanding that the purpose of it, I think, is something that should be looked at. Others agree, but it's part of the discussion.
Kath, were you gonna talk to you? I think you might.
Sorry, couldn't hear you.
Oh, I didn't know if you were coming off mute. It looks like you were about to talk.
I was, but go ahead.
No. I'm gonna change topics. So yeah, you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a meeting it is a great idea, but again, I don't know what we've done in the past, but I feel like a more some kind of more formal handoff to the committees of jurisdiction would be a really good idea. I'd love to see us from the chair and vice chair, maybe a report in writing to the committees of jurisdiction about what they felt, Jitoc accomplished this summer and fall, what we were trying to do, what our, where we left things. I don't see what would be wrong with that. And if I know this is our last meeting, but if the feeling is that the Jitoc statute needs updating, and that we want to, better define or change the scope of Jitoc's authority, I kind of wish we'd talked about that as a committee before our time was up.
Yeah, and just so you're aware, Kath, I'm throwing that out there because that's just my idea. And it's not something that I'm necessarily going to be suggesting that you do anything about. But that's part of the conversation I'm gonna have with you and Wendy. And frankly, if anyone, I don't think it would necessarily be this committee to actually have that conversation. I think it would be the committees of jurisdiction to look at. But I'm not suggesting that that's where it should necessarily go.
Okay.
But sorry to interrupt you on that.
No, it's just the yeah, I'll circle back. I just need to think about that a little bit more. But yeah, I go back to the thing I said earlier. I think it'd be great to have some sort of report from Jitoc committee leadership that's in writing that could be delivered to the committees of jurisdiction so that they could look it over, see what Jitoc did over the summer and fall, and maybe have committee leadership come in and give some testimony.
And I could say hearing that from the chair of the committee of jurisdiction, that will happen. So any other thoughts on where to go next?
Well, is there anything that we want the committees of jurisdiction to do? I mean, that's really the purpose of of us being here is to be able to study something in sufficient depth and also to be able to raise issues to the committees of jurisdiction that they haven't seen. And then also to explain to them or to discuss with them the depth to which we may have gone about specific issues. And one of the things that I am disappointed in is though that we haven't done the overview, because in my mind, oversight is flying over 50,000 feet and looking down at the totality of things of what's the state of IT in state government in Vermont. And that to me is a question that a committee like this ought to at least pose some answers to the committee of jurisdiction. I don't think we've done that. And that may be an issue that we need to think about for next year.
Yeah, Lisa.
Related to that, there was effort last year to expand the reporting requirements of ABS for the dashboard. Perhaps a way to look at the overview is to do some analysis of what projects are currently active, how many are on track. You know, it's hard to really see a complete picture like what Senator Brock is talking about without doing that type of analysis. So that might be, you know, point you in a direction you didn't expect.
I would think that it is important for the issues around what is the word that I'm looking for? Data breaches and cyber issues that we have asked for the three branches to address in a memo, which I believe they've committed to do by when, the beginning or the end of February. That would also seem to be something we would want those committees of jurisdiction to ask about, perhaps. I don't know. I would like to not have that get dropped. That was pretty disturbing as far as I'm concerned, and it needs attention and monitoring.
And I'm generally still, I think this has been since even last year. It felt, or 2 years, however long I've been on here. I'm, as an oversight committee, there's been projects that come up. I generally feel like a lot of the updates we get in here are non-specific, positive, and maybe they are positive, but it's generally not so, like we might hear a mix of things and then it's confusing on what the actual status is. And then everything is quote unquote like fine. And we wrote a letter last time to appropriate money and it felt like we didn't have any teeth to pause or have any hand in what happens if a project isn't actually going fine. Who hears if a project isn't going fine? If it's not us, then I still think that that's a gap that I'm not sure how we address in like the legislature, like hard stop. Like I don't see how we're doing that. And we're talking about some of the biggest line items in state government. So I don't understand how we do that. Maybe Senator Brock, maybe you have an idea. Like you've been on this longer. I just don't know. Like what is, when Jitoc was formed, like, I guess, are there supposed to be mechanisms for oversight in a way that steps in if something is off the rails? Like, how do we even?
Well, obviously, if something is off the rails, we talk about it.
Yeah.
And we bring it to the surface so that the people or persons who is responsible for dealing with it, the agency that's responsible for dealing with it, or agencies of state government as a whole are made aware of it. But when Jitoc was first formed, one of the first purposes of it was to provide oversight, again, at a high level of the state of information technology across state government. And to really first get an understanding of, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
and define what is IT?
Yeah.
And what are the components that are made up? And then to the next level, what are the various IT projects, IT systems, IT-related endeavors, people who have a function? What's a map of all of this? And it's that first part of understanding what it is we're doing. And I'm not sure that we've done that as well as we could have.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I think that's a good point. I think, and part of that, I think, is IT is literally everything that operates in 2025. It's like it touches every single system. It is all IT driven. Everything is data. Everything is systems. So I guess like to hand off to like a Kath and a Wendy, I feel like a little bit bad because I feel like we have so much, you guys have so much to deal with in your committees that span like energy and data or institutions and data. And it feels like if nothing else, the lack of like ability we've been able to do a really big overview and get any sort of depth at all on this in the last like over the summer. Still, like, I'm still so curious why we don't have dedicated IT committees on both the Senate and the House side. I guess that's something that has come to like even more, like this definitely illustrated to me that like we're not actually covering the bases.
Well, as an example, I know that what we did do early on, and we did it for several sessions, is we maintained, and it was primarily the responsibility of the person at that time, and this is several iterations before we had a chief information officer as such. We maintained a list of every system or database in each of the three branches of state government. And then we looked at it and we did it in a somewhat informal way based on the input that we got from people involved in the agencies that says, what's the status of this with respect to red, green, and yellow? And it's very arbitrary, but it's a common way of just looking at where do we think our problems may be and where do we think the problems are good, so that we can direct our efforts from an oversight standpoint and suggest that the people in the development area, the people in the operations area can, and we consulted them as well. Think about it. Does this make sense to you in terms of just trying to isolate where are the areas that we should concentrate our time? Where are the areas that we are worried about, lose sleep about? What are the areas that the people who are handling these particular matters are particularly concerned about, so that we can focus our effort? That to me is oversight. Unfortunately, we didn't keep up.
I have a question. It's like, so expanding off of what you're saying, I think like, and where we started with the like some trends from like Lisa's reports of like what are trends we should be looking at and questions we should be asking of like every single thing. I'm curious, like, are there, and when we ask questions either on the fly or in writing, I don't know that they were always answered. And so I'm curious about any thoughts from people in the room, Joe or Lisa, Rick. Additionally, like, are there reporting requirements and or like legislative things that we should expect, not only in Jitoc, but in the standing committees that are like, you know, there's going to be a standard set of like expectations of information that is given every single year, so you can actually find the trends. You don't have to go chasing after every individual project. Like to have JFO investigate one project, like we're getting the reporting, certain reporting standards and information from on every project, kind of across the board. Like, yeah.
I'm all big on the status pages. I'm all big on making sure that the public understands what is going on. I take pride in the fact that we are willing from the judicial branch to show our faults and when we do something and to make commitments to be better. And I think having a really robust status page for IT projects, funding, scope time, requirements, making sure that that's all there, because the general public is not necessarily going, and if I'm overstepping here, please let me know.
No, please.
Is not going to necessarily watch these meetings, right? Like I'm invested in it because obviously I have a vested interest. But the general public may go to a webpage to say, how are my government dollars being spent? How are these things affecting my taxes? Which is a really hot topic this year. So that would be my big thing, is really focusing on defining what the reporting requirements are going to be required of each branch of government, because we're not necessarily going to all do the same thing or want to provide the amount of information that may be necessary according to this committee.
Passes your hand up.
Rep. James.
Just a thought. I'm really just kind of thinking out loud. The purview that Jitoc has, I mean, just the pure subject matter that we could cover, or, you know, that we could spend our time talking about, is really, really, it's so broad. And I just wonder, it's, you know, I kind of had to have a first year on Jitoc to get a sense of it. You know, what are we doing? What's the committee about? And I just wonder for the future if it might not be worth thinking, and I would really welcome everybody's feedback, because maybe this isn't a great idea, but whether it wouldn't be helpful to focus. We could very easily spend a very productive 7 months focused only on taking testimony on key projects on the UPMO dashboard, period. You know, and those are the biggest IT spends. They're the ones that ADS is tracking on its dashboard. They tend to be the ones that Lisa is working on and following. They're the ones with the biggest money and the biggest stakes. And, you know, we would have time to take really in-depth testimony over the course of our 6 months on the 6 most expensive, most concerning, most fraught, most important projects, and then deliver at the end of our time a report to the standing committees saying, hey, we spent a lot of time taking a really deep dive on $500 million worth of IT upgrade. And here's our report, and kind of hand it over. Because I feel like, you know, in our committee last year, we tried to do this, but, and we did, you know, we tried to take testimony in a kind of a systematic way on some of the biggest, most expensive, most important IT projects. But we would take a little testimony, and then we'd have to go work on an energy issue, or we'd have to go do an AI thing, or we'd have to go do a cyber thing. And it felt kind of scattershot. So anyway, I think the most important use of our time is to make sure that the legislature is systematically and routinely supporting JFO and supporting ADS and supporting state government in the big projects that cost a lot of money, where we have a really clear oversight role. And it's just something to think about for the future. I don't know what people think about that, but I'm always trying to narrow scope and think about areas where our committees can really take on a targeted scope of work, have an impact, deliver a report, and hand off the reins.
Thanks, Katha, and I appreciate that. Part of what I hoped we would be able to do was to do that a little bit, although it wasn't completely focused on that. We touched on, I think, 5 of the more important ones, but I don't think it was as in depth as you're suggesting, because we did try to touch on the others. Senator Buff.
The only thing that I would add to it, I absolutely agree in prioritization, so that you look at the things that you deem to be the most important. But unless you collect an inventory of everything, you have the risk of leaving something out that you should have put on that list that you either didn't know about, didn't pay attention to, didn't have brought to your attention as to be important in the first place, because none of us here are experts to the depth of understanding each and everything that's going on in state government IT. Yes, we come to that by the amount of money that we're spending on it, or the amount of time and effort and staff we're spending on it. But there's always the risk you're going to miss something that is significant, from an IT exposure standpoint, unless you have the ability to have oversight over all the various pieces to at least know that they exist, to be able to ask questions about them.
Senator Brock, I'm curious, do you think that the EPMO dashboard on the ADS website is not comprehensive enough? Is that what you mean, that that's not a good starting point?
I'm not sure that I know what that what that dashboard is, quite frankly. Perhaps I know it by another name.
Okay. Okie doke. That's it. I mean, it's it was something that we focused a lot of our time on, so I'm more familiar with it, and Senator Plunkett would be familiar with it, and Rep. Sibilia too, because of the committees we serve on. But it's a reporting dashboard, and I see Lisa in the room. I see you over there on the bench. Yeah, Lisa probably can describe it more efficiently than I can, but it would be a pretty decent starting point, I think.
I'll take a look this afternoon.
Okay.
And I'll send you the link to it, Randy.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, we did not look at that too closely during our time.
Lisa,
Okay.
do you have thoughts?
Well, I think there's been some movement in state government to address some of the old mainframe systems. And we're seeing fewer and fewer of those, but I think it would be a good idea to at some point understand what the scope of those are left out there. And I know ADS has said, well, sometimes they're not necessarily the priorities. Sometimes they just function and it's fine. But I think, that might be a good place to explore too. Like how many are left, for someone to look at. Because IE&E is, when their plans are to, create a new type, use a modern database, but they also have to feed the old ones with their new system because other programs still use it. And they're all intertwined, much like UI was, right? But I think it's important to understand what's left of those two, because to me that represents risk regardless of what anyone says, whether it's risk to the ability to change and respond to current situations or the danger of an old system going down. And so that's just another we haven't talked a lot about, but I don't want to lose sight of.
Great. Well, thank you all, and thank you all for your patience with me as a new chair, a new legislator. Appreciated this, and I hope we'll be able to go forward with something. I will be drafting a report and a letter. If there are any recommendations in that, it'll be all sent out to the committee for approval before we send it. And other than that, I hope I'll see everyone tomorrow in some fashion. I'm staying overnight. So anyone else have any final thoughts?